So I would like to share with you a glimpse of the implication on contaminated land management, which we call it CLM. This is actually in line with the DOE guidelines actually, and it will actually, just for your information, we're working very closely with DOE, and of course we are actually the consultant in environmental and also renewable energy sectors. So this guidelines is actually going to be in place as an act by end of this year. So I was just going to introduce you ourselves, Path Green. Okay, we are actually start off with the environmental sectors, which we focus on environmental management, waste management, and after that we merge ourselves into the energy sector, which is the renewable energy, and also considering on energy efficiency. And of course, we also do a facilitation of green businesses, liaise with the authorities, project financing, and also green tax exemption. So this is just a brief information that who is Path Green, okay? So without hesitation, let's go on to next slides. So what is contaminated land? Anyone know what is contaminated land is? Basically, it would actually means, okay, this is actually a guideline book, which is what do you call that? By the DOE. They actually have this book implemented as a guideline. All right. So contaminated land is actually described as a land that contains substance in or under land that are actually potential of hazardous to the human, animals, and also to the environment. So contaminated land means a site which substance occur at the concentration above natural occurring metal concentration and pose or are likely to pose an immediate or long-term hazard to human health or towards the environment. And it actually exceeds the concentration specified in the site screening levels. So what is actually contaminated towards two? So it actually towards two things. One is on groundwater, which we are looking into, and the next text will be on the sand area. So contaminated groundwater. Groundwater pollution occurs when hazardous substance come into contact and dissolve into water that has soaked into the soil. This is actually quoted by the US EPA regulation. And next would be hazardous substance are the most toxic and must be prevented from entering groundwater. They include pesticides, solvents, hydrocarbons, mercury, and so on. Okay? How it actually happens? If you look at the graphic here, it actually have a few types of sources that actually makes this contaminated happens. Of course, we know industrial areas might give a biggest contribution because of they have a lot of chemicals, hazardous chemicals that store underneath, okay, and all this actually goes towards the inner part of the soil. It seeps inside the soil area, and of course, it will penetrate to the groundwater. And who actually get what do you call that? The effect of it is actually the receptors, the home receptors. Okay, they actually might use some of the groundwater. Okay, and it will actually, if it is contaminated, it will brings a bad health, of course. All right. These are some of the potential polluting activities. You might come from different industries, all right? So these are some of the concerns that you might actually need to think of. Okay, you have plants that have a lot of storage, toxic things. So you might need to embed some of the tanks and so on underneath. Okay, did you do a regular checking and so on? If yes, that would be good, because if no, there might be leakages and so on. It will actually seeps towards the groundwater, the soil, and towards the groundwater. This is actually very dangerous, what do you call that? Monitoring factor that you have to do. If not, you might not know that you are actually contaminating the land area. So these are the few polluting activities, say acid or alkaline plant, chemical manufacturing storage, electronics, fertilizers, toxic hazardous waste storage, and also storage tank for fuel and chemical. Okay, what are the risks to the environmental and human health? We might not able to see it like over the night, okay, of these contaminated uh, things that will contaminate your land, your water, or air, okay. But these are the facts actually. It will actually grows towards effect towards human health. You can see some of the pictures here. They are actually born, not in a good condition actually, because of some of the consumption of inhaling of the gas or contaminated gas or groundwater, or water that goes along your daily life, right? So some of the toxics that we are talking about, like benzene, toluene, ethylene, this you can't see through your rough eyes. You have to go through some of the, what do you call it, tests, to know that is it contaminated or not. So this is actually an important measure. What are the exposure with the contaminants? So drinking the contaminated water, ingestion, by breathing, like what I said just now, of the contaminated air from pumping gas or from the water while showering or laundering, and also from spill on your skin. Okay, some chemical toxics when you work with industry areas and so on, you might not know what is actually affecting you with all those toxics that you are handling. Why contaminated land management is important to you? Why am I taking care of this issue to share with all of you? Is because we can see that not everyone is actually looking into this area of how to say, manage your own compound or property, okay? Because whenever you do some business and so on the property, you will not know what has actually comes out and seep to the sand, land, and also the groundwater underneath. So this is actually the unknown risk that arise to the property owner. So for years, these multinational companies have actually realized the risks associated with the hidden subsurface contamination and have conducted assessment tests. So towards this type of tests that you run through, you will actually know what are the things that you produce and so on that actually affects your liability of your property. So what are your risks actually? Here you can see there are a few that I have listed down. There are current and future hidden liabilities, blown budgets. If you know the contamination of the land area, that you have to clear it or so on. So it will be quite a huge amount. Okay, negative branding. If you are really caught by DOE by surprise and they actually conducted a test towards your land area and it is found contaminated, you can actually have a very bad reputation. And also regulatory penalties, as I told you just now. This is actually still a guideline, but it will actually be implemented soon, as according to what Department of Environment. Okay, so it is very important for you to actually protect yourself. So in order to do so, I will let you know what are the steps later. Okay. Unmarketable properties. Of course, if your property is contaminated, who wants to buy your property, right? And of course, if you are a contaminator, if you are proved to be the contaminator, you are actually in a jail sentence, actually up to 5 years. So CLM guidelines also quoted that polluters pay principle. This is who the polluter that contaminated the land, they actually have to pay for it. Okay. So how can we help to quantify and manage your risks? First of all, risk can be managed when you understand how it affects you. Okay, say maybe your storage tank is having a leakage, or maybe some of your sewage water treatment plant is not working well, and so on. So this is actually some of the risks that you have to understood first. So at the next steps is where environmental due diligence services that we can actually provide you to run through and assess on your property to know what are the chemicals that you use or what are the contaminants that might affect you. Okay. And of course, through the results of the EDD or environmental due diligence, that can actually become your register baseline information, in which later it will act as a protection to you, that you know, okay, I'm doing this type of painting manufacturing company. So is there any leakages? Is there any contaminant on my land area? How can I know that? So this is where you have to do EDD. And also after the EDD, you have to do another assessment, which is the site assessment, where you have to do some sampling works, okay, like on your soil, on your groundwater, to go for some tests. And the test result will actually give you what do you call your baseline, that is this things or is this chemicals that I'm handling is polluting my land, my own property, okay. And when this comes in place, if you're able to know what are the contaminants and so on, if you really contaminated some of the area, your rectifying cost is actually quite a minimal at the earlier stage. If you wait until longer stage, and that would be actually a higher budget for you. And of course, if it is found not contaminated, when the DOE comes to do some checking or audits on your plant, you can actually tell them, you can actually show them the results or the reports from what you have done, to prove that this is actually out of any contamination. All right. Okay, we have done a few case study. This is one of the example. Okay, it's actually an industry of semiconductor factory. It's a Japanese company actually. They are afraid of the chemical spillage in their own factory area. So they are actually upfront calling up us to do an assessment on their land area. And this is what we have done actually. A site assessment, we have do an EDD check, and after that they would want us to proceed on the monitoring stage, where we actually install some of the wells around their own property parameters, and from there we have to check on their groundwater, okay, is that contaminated or not, or and also the soil around the area. We also have to check, is that contaminated or not. So from this type of what do you call that, the monitoring system that we have done, we can actually also know that is the contamination coming from your own property or from your neighboring factories or company, because through the groundwater actually is water, right? They actually flows from the higher gradient to the lower gradient. So say your property is actually at the downstream or at the lower area. So the contamination, when we do some what do you call that, sampling at your area, it actually shows contaminated. But you are curious why, say, benzene is found in my property. I didn't produce any of this type of chemical. So we will actually have another, let me see, another type of what do you call that, modeling, groundwater modeling, to show that maybe your neighboring is actually contributing this benzene chemicals towards your area. So you are actually not the real polluter. So this is where the what do you call it, the monitoring system actually helps you to define what are the contaminated pollutants that actually exist. Maybe from the neighboring, you can actually encounter that. You have your contaminated land reported that you have high benzene, but it is actually not you producing it. It might be from your neighboring, because of they are at the higher level, and actually their contamination is going towards your property area. So this you can actually encounter to the DOE and so on, to actually check on your neighboring factories and so on. So that will actually protect you from any issues with these contaminated chemicals. Okay, so these are some of the monitoring works that we have done: groundwater sampling, water level monitoring, and also gas monitoring. Okay. Yeah, this is what I said about the groundwater modeling. We will actually run a groundwater modeling on your property area to see what are the causes of flow of the groundwater. Say this is your, maybe your property is nearby this area, and this is your neighboring area, okay? That might actually shows that where is the highest contamination point, okay? Okay, this is another issue that or case study that I can share with you. This is from the Hinckley, California. The factory name is actually Pacific Gas and Electric Company, PG&E. It's a compressor station operated in 1952. So what happens to this company? It's a very huge company. If you actually can Google it, it's a very, very huge company. They are dealing very good initially, okay? But what draws them down is actually the hexavalent chromium that actually they use to fight the corrosion in the cooling tower. So they keep on using this hexachlorine, okay, so that to protect their cooling tower. And this type of what do you call it, chemicals is actually when they use prolonged, it actually very hazardous chemicals. They did not actually rectify how to protect it when they use it, okay? And the untreated water was discharged to the unlined evaporation pond. Some of the waste water percolated in the groundwater and affect the area near the plant approximately about 3.2 ppm by 1.6 km. So these chemicals is actually accumulated in the nearby groundwater pond, okay, groundwater area. So the residential people nearby there is actually quite disturbed with this type of effect, because over the years they actually have a lot of problems like liver problem, respiratory, and also health problem, but a lot of things. And they have actually run through a report to this PGE to run an test to see are they contaminating towards these of water resources. And yes, the results came that they are actually polluting a lot of chemicals to the water resource nearby the area. So what they have to do, they actually have to do a cleanup cost. So they have actually paid about 3.6 million of rectifying and also cleaning the process of it. Okay. So I guess that's a short share from my presentation.